Researchers across the country are scrambling to develop a coronavirus vaccine. And this, of course, as the United States death toll nears 190,000. 3 American vaccines have entered the last phase of clinical trials. At least 46,000 people are participating in those trials. Now the race for a vaccine is entering the political spotlight. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden and his running mate say they would want to hear from scientists, not just President Trump, before being inoculated.
I want full transparency on the vaccine. One of the problems is the way he's playing with politics. Is he said so many things that aren't true. I'm worried if we do have a really good vaccine, people are going to be reluctant to take it. And so he's undermining public confidence.
Biden and his very liberal running mate, the most liberal person in Congress, by the way, is not a competent person, in my opinion, would destroy this country and would destroy this economy. Should immediately apologize for the reckless anti-vaccine rhetoric that they are talking right now, talking about endangering lives, and it undermines science.
All right, let's check in with CBS News White House correspondent Paula Reid, who's following all of this from the White House and joins us now. So, Paula, I'm not going to relitigate the things that the president has said in the past, like the virus disappearing or the disinfectant, story. I want to know from you, what are you hearing about how this rhetoric is impacting voters, the vaccine rhetoric that we're hearing from both candidates?
Well, Vlad, before we get to the news of the day, have to say congratulations and best wishes. My husband and I are so excited for you. It is so nice to have a happy story in the middle of all these more weighty stories that we are covering right now.
Thank you very much, Paul. I really appreciate that, my friend. You're so sweet. Thank you.
But when it comes to the vaccine, you just heard the president right there. He was vilifying his opponents for raising skepticism about whether there's been political pressure on this vaccine process. And it's interesting, what the Democrats are saying is really reflected in our polling of voters. Increasingly, voters are saying that they would be concerned if a vaccine is made available this year, that their first thought would be that it was rushed through without enough testing, that there would be some sort of political motivation. Just 21% of voters nationwide now say they would get a vaccine as soon as possible if one was available at no cost. But that's down from 32% of people in late July. Most people said they would consider it, but they'd want to see what happens before getting one. And this is so significant because it suggests that voters are concerned about political pressure in this process and that they don't necessarily trust what they're hearing from this administration. This is also spilling over into the private sector, private companies. For example, Johnson & Johnson. They released a statement today noting that they are going to wait until the data demonstrates that a vaccine is safe and effective, clearly issuing this forward-leaning statement trying to assure consumers that they will not be swayed by political pressure.
Over the weekend, Paula, both of the candidates responded to that controversial Atlantic article in which the president was accused of calling the American military members who died fighting losers. Biden getting really fired up about it. Trump almost creating another controversy to deal with this other controversy. So take us through what both men had to say about the accusations in that article.
That's right. Yesterday, the president held what was billed as a Labor Day press conference just a little ways from where I'm standing right now on the north side of the White House. But he defended himself once again against this Atlantic magazine report alleging that he canceled this trip to an American cemetery because the folks buried there were reportedly losers. He dismissed that report. He said that only a, quote, animal would say such a thing. But then he pivoted to appearing to attack military leaders. He even suggested that he's saying, I'm not saying the military is in love with me, the soldiers are. But then he went on to attack what he referred to as the top people in the Pentagon. He's saying that all they want to do is fight wars. And since that is something that he says that he's opposed to, they're unhappy with him launching this new controversy. His Democratic rival seized on this. Joe Biden called the president's remarks downright un-American. And he also invoked his son, Beau, his late son, Beau, who was an Iraq War veteran and died of cancer in 2015, saying, quote, my Beau wasn't a loser.
Paula, we're also hearing that the president is expected to make an announcement soon about Supreme Court justices. What can you tell us about that? And perhaps could we see something similar from the Biden camp?
So I spoke with a White House source earlier today who confirms that the president is working on a list of people that he would appoint to the Supreme Court if he is elected for a second term. Now, this list could be released as soon as this week. And to put this in context, this is incredibly important, because back in 2016, the president released a similar list, and it was really a turning point in his campaign. It prompted a lot of particularly evangelical voters to give him another look and to realize that he may have some traits that they didn't necessarily support. But when it came to stacking the courts, they really supported the people he was proposing. And this particular issue is one of the indisputable promises made, promises kept of his administration. He has stacked the federal courts with over 200 conservative judges, 60 on the Court of Appeals alone. So it's incredibly significant in the context of his overall campaign as he tries to rally his supporters. Anyone with doubts, anyone who's considering staying home because of maybe how they feel about him as a person, his other policies, some of the investigations, this is something that he hopes propels them to the ballot box or to their mailbox to vote for him.
I think it's a really interesting point that you bring up, that this was a kind of a bit of a turning point for him during the last election, because a lot of what we are seeing during this campaign period is very similar to what had worked for him the last time around. Of course, the last time around, he wasn't the one in charge for the previous 4 years. And so, I guess we'll all see whether or not just repeating what had happened before is going to really make much of a difference. But you talk about this list and how it could, the hope is that it could sort of woo people back, particularly more conservative evangelical voters. Who's on the list? Do we have any idea?
Well, you make an important point, Anne-Marie, about the 2016 playbook and whether it's going to work now. You hear the president repeatedly say that if Joe Biden is elected, you'll see more of the violence that we've seen in cities across the country. But again, he's president. So it's very confusing, some of the arguments that he continues to make about things that are happening on his watch and how it'll be different if he is reelected. But when it comes to who's going to be on this list, you can expect to see some of the people that he's already nominated, for example, to courts of appeals, folks that he's already put on the bench. It's an opportunity for him to not only advertise who he would pick, but also remind people of how many conservative judges he's already put on the court. And the idea of law and justice, it has once again come to the forefront in terms of the larger conversation we're having about police use of force, police reform. The courts are right now where a lot of the laws on the books are litigated, while Congress can certainly change the standard that we use for police and use of force, or state legislatures can change that. Really, it comes down to the courts, and this is an issue the president, his campaign, they want to put at the forefront of voters' minds, particularly those voters that they mentioned at the convention who may not like President Trump as a person. They want to remind him of some of the deliverables that he has executed on.
And Paula, let me ask you about something else here. The negotiations between Republicans and Democrats over coronavirus stimulus measures are still stalled. Republicans in the Senate are expected to put forward a limited bill soon. What's the latest, and what are you hearing on where the president stands on this back and forth between members of Congress?
Well, the Republicans are going to put forth this skinny bill. They're going to put forth proposals on a few of the issues that are on the table. But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has been consistent throughout these negotiations that she does not want to engage on talks on a skinny bill. Her concern is if they resolve a few of these key issues, that she'll never get Republicans back to talk about the rest of the issues. But Vlad, here at the White House, hope springs eternal. Earlier today, the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, said that he thinks in the next 2 weeks, there is going to be enough pressure on Congress that they may be able to come to a deal. Right now, they do agree on some things. They agree on potentially sending another round of stimulus checks, expanding unemployment, funding for schools. But the stumbling block is the money that Democrats want to send to state and local governments. That is something that Republicans oppose. They also currently oppose the multi-trillion-dollar price tag that Democrats have put forward for their bill, particularly in the wake of the bill that was passed prior, the original CARES Act, that was, as my sources here love to remind me, passed with unprecedented size and unprecedented speed. They argue that they're still giving out some of the money that was approved there. So right now, the White House is trying to say, the president even suggested yesterday that a deal might happen. When I look at the two sides of this deal, I have trouble believing that they are going to come to a deal. And it appears, based on our reporting, that the incentives are not increasing as we get close to the election. It just doesn't appear that it benefits either side to sort of reach across the aisle and make a compromise.
Man, and Paula, it's probably already too late for a lot of people that are way behind on their bills. And yeah, there's this moratorium on evictions, but that money needs to be paid back at some point. So they got to get down to business. Paula, thank you so much.